Welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, we're going to go over some of the big signings from this past week in free agency, the first week of CFL free agency. I'm going to give you one signing for every team that I really did like. I thought that was their best signing. And then the other one, I'm going to say one that I'm not going to say is a outright bad one, but one that makes me question it a little bit. But really quickly before we get into that, I want to first and foremost thank everybody that joined me for the live stream last week. I'm sorry I haven't been able to get out a video until now, but I'm going to have some content coming in the next few days. And I'm actually going to be going on a trip next week, but I have a couple videos that I've pre-recorded, and I will schedule them to be released next week. So you guys have some content on the channel. I'm sorry for not going a week without uploading a video here on the channel, but I appreciate you guys for sticking with me. And with that said, we got a lot to get to. Let's get started. Okay, so starting in the East Division, we're going to start with the best signing, and then we're going to work to the questionable one. For the Ottawa Redblacks, for the best signing, and I think this one is rather obvious here, it's Jeremiah Masoli. And it's just really no debate about this one. This is just a massive upgrade at the quarterback position. What they were throwing out there the past couple of years were very, just guys that just weren't quality CFL starters. And Masoli, say what you want about him and debate his ceiling, but he is, at his worst, still a starting level CFL quarterback, and that's much better than what Ottawa was dealing with the past couple of seasons. Now, for Ottawa, I actually loved almost everything they did this offseason. In terms of signings, I actually went through and gave letter grades to every free agent signing on every team, and I don't have a letter grade for Ottawa signings that are less than a B. So I really liked what they did. But one that I think you can question is he's really going to add that much value to this team, and that is veteran guard Hunter Stewart, who was part of a very poor BC Lions offensive line in 2019 and 2021. And, I think he's still one of the better parts of that unit. But how much is that going to carry over, and how much of a plus guy is going to be on that offensive line? He's been in the league for a long time, but we'll see what he can do this season in Ottawa. Now moving on to Montreal, and I liked a lot of what Montreal did, similar to what Ottawa did. Obviously, Ottawa, making a lot more big splashes than Montreal, but I think Montreal had a couple really, really solid moves in this free agency period, and one I really, really did like, and this guy, it might shock you, because some of my videos I mentioned that he was really underperforming this year, and that is Hergy Mayala. They bring over from the Calgary Stampeders. Hey guys, you get to see my beautiful handwriting here, but Hergy Mayala, I picked this guy. This is how high I think the guy's potential is. I picked this guy before the 2021 season to win Most Outstanding Canadian. And, obviously he had a huge flop of a season this year compared to his really standout rookie season. And I'm really interested to see how he does in Montreal. I think it's a really good buy low signing for Montreal, because they have Keon Julian Grant there that has some potential, some good amount of speed and studs. He has some potential. But I think adding another guy to that receiving room, another Canadian guy, because they really don't have anything else beyond that, I think that was just a really smart move. I actually said that was almost like an A plus kind of move for Montreal. Now, one that's kind of questionable, and I do like the idea that you should always get better at the quarterback position, and I just gave it away here, but I do like that idea, is that you want to get the best backup available. But I'm really questioning how much this is going to, cause a rift in the locker room. And that is Trevor Harris. Coming back here, and, I include this because he was released by the team about 2 months ago in December. And then, 6 weeks later, back with Montreal. And it was just such a weird situation because, Trevor Harris, he's quite an accomplished backup, regardless of what you can say about his game and how he's played in recent years. Is very much an established guy in this league. I'm a fan of a team that had two quality, starting level quarterbacks in Dane Evans and Jeremiah Masoli last year in Hamilton. That can kind of create a rift within the team. I think it's still a solid B move for Montreal, but I do. That's the part of that makes me wonder. It's like how that's going to play into Vernon Adams' psyche now that it's like like they have this proven guy behind you that you could lose your job here. So I think it's just a solid move. But I think there's still some variance that it could go sideways, I think. Next, we have Toronto, and they've done moves that range all over the spectrum. There's stuff I've loved, stuff I just can't stand what they did, and some stuff that, are a little questionable. I can see it breaking either way. And so we're going to start with the best one here, and I think this one is one of the more obvious ones as well on this list, and that is Hamilton Tirecats, for former Hamilton Tirecats defensive end Jagarrett Davis. This year I plan on doing one of those top 50 list of like top 50 players before the season, just because I look at the TSN list that they put it every year, and I always like questioning it a bit, so I kind of want to do my own list. But Jagarrett Davis would be in the top 15 to 10 of that list. Honestly, he's one of the biggest impact players in the league. And those defensive ends are becoming having one of those game-breaking defensive ends is becoming so essential in today's CFL. So I think that's an A+ move for Toronto, and stealing it away and hurting Hamilton. Now, for a move I didn't like, or am I having questions about it? And like, it's not that I wouldn't have done it if I was in the Argos position this off season. But I think there's just a lot of potential for both of these signings. And I'm going to put two up on the board because I really couldn't not talk about both of these signings or either or of these signings in this video. So what I'm talking about is them signing two 35-year-old skill position players that are coming off down seasons in Andrew Harris from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Brandon Banks, wide receiver from the Hamilton Tirecats. For the Argos, like I said, I can understand why they signed these players. I think for Banks, it gives them that after-the-catch receiver. That a lot of the Argos' best receivers are more possession guys that are really good at winning the contested catches and making plays like that, but aren't necessarily the guys that are going to catch a short pass and turn it into a big gain. So I think Banks could really help them in that regard. If he can recover some of that, game-breaking ability that he had back in 2019. But this past season, he wasn't even among the top 20 receivers or so in the league. So, I think we're going to see a little bit of a bounce back from Brandon Banks, but can he get back to that game-breaking level? It's going to be really interesting to see. And because, these guys are 35 years old, and we'll get to Andrew Harris in a second. But it's like, how long do you have before the wheels fall off? And when you're signing a player that old, you gamble. And then Toronto just went through this last season with Charleston Hughes, where he just was this big signing for them and just couldn't really contribute throughout the season. So I'm worried that Brandon Banks will have that experience again, like Charleston Hughes did with the Argos. That's a worry if I were the Argos. And then for Andrew Harris, completely understand why they signed him. Getting that power downhill running back, even though I really do like DJ Foster as well. But I think the fact that they were able to share the backfield with John White last season and get both of those guys, and because Foster's such a great receiver, you can put him in the slot on any given play and keep him on the field because he's such a dynamic weapon. But him and Andrew Harris could be a great duo. But does Andrew Harris stay healthy after getting banged up a couple of times last season? So it's going to be really interesting to see how these two signings play out for the Argos. Now moving on to my favorite team, the Hamilton Tirecats. And the Tirecats had kind of a wishy-washy offseason. I liked a little bit of what they did. I think they brought in some quality players in free agency, but I think they did lose a couple guys, namely Jagarrett Davis. That's the main piece there, and Darius Sirocco on the offensive line. But one signing I think that is really good that I think flies right below the radar, and that's because he's a former Tirecat that spent a few seasons with the team, and that is defensive back Richard Leonard. And Leonard, just a really solid defensive back. Sorry, I keep fooling with this microphone, guys. Just trying to experiment with some of these different types of videos with the whiteboard. But Leonard had such a great season with the Tiger-Cats in 2019, was a CFL All-Star, and then he left in free agency to Calgary, signed a couple-year deal there, and after one season with the team, he's back. I think this is a really solid signing, especially in the wake of losing Delvin Breaux to the BC Lions, even though not even really losing because Delvin Breaux did not play for the team last season, but the fact that, Breaux did not sign with the team, and then they were able to bring in Leonard instead. So I think that's a really solid move. And if I was grading this, I would give them like an A for that signing of Richard Leonard for the Tiger-Cats. My questionable signing for the Tiger-Cats may surprise you, and that is Micah Johnson. And it's not because this guy is not a great player, because he's been one of the most dominant interior defensive linemen in the CFL over the past 5 years. And, he's going to do his job, and I think this is, no worse than like a B on this signing if I was to grade it. But there's part of me that questions the fit a little bit. You brought back Ted Laurent, you brought back Dylan Wynn, both interior defensive linemen. And now you bring in Johnson, so you have these three really quality defensive tackles, but then you have this gaping hole at defensive end, really left behind by Ja'Garret Davis. Julian Hauser is a pretty good player. They brought in J.R. Tavai, but I question the fit and how they're going to maximize the abilities of those three defensive tackles and get them on the field at the same time. Maybe they move Dylan Wynn out to defensive end, but just the questionable fit for me is why I would say it's kind of a questionable signing for the Tiger-Cats. Now moving on to the West Division, and I wanted to start with the Edmonton Elks because they're the most busy team in the West, likewise to what the Ottawa was in the East. And the signing that I really, really, really did like for the Edmonton Elks was Mark Cordy, offensive lineman from Ottawa. People around the CFL may not be as familiar with Cordy because of the awful performance of the Ottawa Redblacks the past couple of years, but he was like consistently the best offensive lineman on that team. He started in his first year after being selected in the first round by Ottawa, and actually started a lot at left tackle as his first year, and then confusingly got moved to center to begin this season, and that's where he started the majority of the season. So he has a lot of versatility. So Edmonton can really plug him in any part of that offensive line, and I think that's going to be a major upgrade. Every time you watch this guy, his play strength really stands out. And I think, I just think Edmonton was due for a talent infusion on the offensive line after, really underwhelming in 2021. On the other hand, the questionable signing is a no-brainer to me, and that is Kenny Lawler, wide receiver from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And Lawler, obviously coming off the season that he is, led the league in receiving yards last year. And I'm not questioning the fact that he is a very good player, and he's, extremely athletic, and he's really worked on the other aspects of his game, running different kinds of routes and being more of an after-the-catch threat as well. But I think for Edmonton to trust him to really be your transformational piece on offense. And, I don't like to talk about the contracts because we don't know a lot about the contracts in the CFL. But the number did leak out what he's getting paid, and apparently it's $300,000 for next year, which makes him by far the highest paid non-quarterback in the CFL for next season. Is he worth that? We're going to really find out because Edmonton, obviously I think they really need these surrounding players to play at their all-time best, really, because their quarterback situation on paper just doesn't look very, promising right now. I think they really need the surrounding pieces to really elevate their performance. And a guy like Kenny Lawler, that's why they're paying him now that money to really elevate this receiving core. Is he going to do it? I don't know, man, because that 1 year with Winnipeg where it really was an ideal situation for a guy to really break out as a receiver. I don't know if Lawler's going to do that for Edmonton, but we will see. Next, we're on to the BC Lions, and the best one for them is a no-brainer for me, even though they had other notable signings as well, and that is Steven Richardson, defensive tackle from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This is exactly what BC needed. They needed a difference maker on the defensive line, particularly on the inside. Steven Richardson really came on down the stretch as one of the pretty much premier defensive tackles in the league. So I think there's really nobody better that could have signed to fill that defensive tackle role for BC. Now for the questionable signings, and I think there's a few you could choose from for BC, but even though I love this in terms of the sentiment of it, and I hope it works out for them, but it has me concerned about this team going into next season, and that is the signing of Canadian quarterback Michael O'Connor to be this team's backup quarterback. In theory, I really do like that, it's going to be a 1-2 Canadian punch at quarterback for the BC Lions next season, unless another guy they signed, Isaac Harker, beats out O'Connor for the job. But what really concerns me about it is really just the experience of it, having two really, really young quarterbacks, especially in a situation in BC where I think Rick Campbell, the coach there, and the GM, they need to win next year. They haven't been in the playoffs for a few years now. I think it's 2018 the last time BC made it, and they haven't had a winning season in like 6 years. I might have that wrong, 6 years, but don't quote me on that. But I know it's been quite a while since BC's really been that relevant team in the CFL, especially in the West Division. So, I don't know if going with two young guys, and especially when you had like a guy like Trevor Harris out there open to get, I don't know if that's the best move for BC, honestly, but hopefully, and I'm cheering for this completely to work out. I just have questions about the viability of the O'Connor being the backup behind Rourke. Next, we have the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and Saskatchewan didn't have a super busy free agent period, and you'll notice the common theme with these last three teams here. Not a whole ton in terms of going out on the open market and bringing in guys. But Saskatchewan, the guys that they did bring in, two very notable players. And we'll start with the best signing, which I think was signing Derek Moncrief from the Edmonton Elks. I just think this move made too much sense. He had played in Saskatchewan in 2019 where he really excelled. And then when he went to Edmonton this year, he was still an elite player just playing on a really bad team. Why not just go to a better football team in Saskatchewan? They had a need at that strong side linebacker position, especially after losing Luchez Purifoy. I think that was just a really no-brainer move for both player and team, and he's going to fit seamlessly back into that Saskatchewan Roughriders defense led by Jason Shivers. Now, on the other hand, the signing that I have a little bit of questions about is the signing of middle linebacker Darnell Sankey from the Calgary Stampeders. And again, this is another one of those cases that the player is great. The player, it's not a question about whether the player is good. I just question the fit a little bit and the redundancy of this move by the Saskatchewan Roughriders. My thing with this, and I have no doubt that Sankey's going to be a terrific player for Saskatchewan, it's just the need to make this move when you had a lot of other needs in Saskatchewan, such as the offensive line, and I think they could have added some more pieces on the defensive line as well. And also, they also lost a lot of guys in the secondary, as it turns out, with Luchez Purifoy and Ed Gainey getting out the door. So, investing more in the middle linebacker position when you already had you have solid guys like Micah Tights. Larry Dean is coming back from his injury, and I think that really says it all about what they think about Larry Dean's chances of coming back from this injury and really being the same player he was. Because if Larry Dean is the same player he was, Larry Dean is probably equally as good of a player as Darnell Sankey, because Larry Dean was right up there as the best middle linebacker in the CFL when he was healthy. But coming off that Achilles injury, who knows? And signing Sankey, that played basically the same position. And like I said, Micah Tights played really well for them last year as a Canadian guy in that linebacking core. I wonder if they're going to, take him out of the starting lineup. And then Moncrief is going to be locking it down at strong side linebacker slash a defensive back position there. So I just question the redundancy and the need to make this move. But I think Sankey's still going to be terrific for Saskatchewan. Now, finally, we're just going to breeze through these last two teams because they really didn't do a whole lot. But Winnipeg had some notable signings in the couple of moves they did make, and the best one, in my opinion, was wide receiver Greg Ellingson coming over from the Edmonton Elks. And I think, after losing Kenny Lawler, this is about as good of a move as Winnipeg could have made to replace that production in the receiving core. Ellingson's just super solid. Every year of his career, he produces. Even though he didn't hit the 1,000-yard mark again this year, he was still among the top 10 receivers in receiving yards this season. And I think with a better situation in Winnipeg, he's going to be a lot more engaged, and he's going to be that number one guy in that offense for Winnipeg next season. As for a questionable signing, I really couldn't find one for Winnipeg. The only guy really externally they signed was Taekwon Glass from the Montreal Alouettes, who's going to fit really well, I think, in that defensive secondary. I think it made a lot more sense. It made a lot of sense, sorry, to bring him in. So I really couldn't find anything for Winnipeg. Now for this last one, I'm kind of going to cheat and say this was, because this guy was technically acquired by trade and then was signed, basically like re-signed by the Calgary Stampeders. But Calgary really wasn't busy at all. The two like external free agent signings that they made were just not really significant kind of depth moves. But I think this move is really solid, and I've talked about it a little bit in a video the other week, and that is coming over from the Toronto Argonauts linebacker Cameron Judge. I think this is a wise acquisition for Calgary because I think Judge, he was a guy that was just beat out by better players in Toronto, in my opinion, in the linebacking core. I think if they can play him at his usual spot of weak side linebacker, he's going to slide in there real fine. A guy that they actually did sign that, one of those random depth moves I was talking about was another Canadian linebacker. So this is really indicating that Judge is going to be for sure starter in this Calgary linebacking core this season. They're going to make that a Canadian spot. And I'm really excited to see how that turns out for Calgary. It's, really the only noteworthy transaction that they've brought in externally. Most of the guys will bring back from the past season. So really excited to see what, Calgary and Cameron Judge do in 2022. But with that said, that is going to be the end of today's video, ladies and gentlemen. And I apologize again about the weird setup. The audio may sound funny for this video. I'm just kind of experimenting with different looks for the set on the channel, so bear with me through that. I really liked using the whiteboard during the live stream, so I decided to use it today, but probably not going to be an every video kind of thing going forward, so don't worry about that, guys. So I appreciate you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, guys. Let me know what you guys think down below, and with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.